Good morning. Today we are discussing cavernous sinus thrombosis. We will begin by establishing the clinical significance of this condition. Cavernous sinus thrombosis, or CST, is a rare but potentially lethal thrombophlebitic disorder. While the annual incidence is low, estimated between 2 and 13 cases per million, the stakes are incredibly high. Despite modern medical advances, mortality rates remain between 11% and 30%, and among survivors, permanent neurologic sequelae affect up to 75% of patients. This condition is most prevalent in young adults with a mean age of onset of 22 years and shows a slight predilection for males. To understand the pathophysiology, we must visualize the anatomy. The cavernous sinuses are paired venous structures located at the base of the skull, flanking the sella turcica. They are anatomically unique because they contain critical neurovascular structures. The internal carotid artery and cranial nerve 6 traverse the body of the sinus, while cranial nerves 3, 4, and the first two divisions of the trigeminal nerve pass along the lateral wall. Critically, the veins in this region are valveless. This allows for bidirectional blood flow, meaning that an infection in the face, nose, or tonsils can travel retrograde into the cavernous sinus. Once bacteria reach the sinus, they become trapped in the trabeculations, triggering thrombus formation. This clot obstructs venous drainage, leading to the clinical catastrophe of cranial nerve compression and intracranial hypertension. The vast majority of CST cases, approximately 80%, are septic in nature, arising from a local infection. The most common culprit is sphenoid or ethmoid sinusitis, which accounts for over half of all cases. We also see cases stemming from dental infections, otogenic sources, or facial furuncles. The microbiology is dominated by Staphylococcus aureus, which is responsible for 70% of bacterial cases, followed by streptococcal species and anaerobes. It is important to note that fungal etiologies exist, but are largely confined to severely immunocompromised patients, such as those with uncontrolled diabetes. Aseptic causes, while less common, include trauma, surgery, and hypercoagulable states such as pregnancy or malignancy. Interestingly, in about 1/4 of cases, the underlying source is never found. Let us consider a hypothetical case to illustrate the typical presentation. Imagine a 24-year-old male presenting to the emergency department. He reports a history of sinus congestion and facial pain that began 10 days ago. Today, he presents with a high fever and a severe unilateral headache in the retroorbital region. On physical examination, you note significant periorbital edema and chemosis of the right eye. This edema is typically the earliest sign. As you examine his extraocular movements, you notice he cannot abduct his right eye past the midline. This lateral rectus palsy suggests involvement of cranial nerve 6, which is the most frequently affected nerve because it runs freely through the body of the sinus rather than being protected in the lateral wall. If this patient were left untreated for another 48 hours, we would likely see the symptoms progress to the contralateral eye. This bilateral involvement is a hallmark of CST, resulting from the spread of thrombosis through the intercavernous sinuses. The patient might also develop pupil abnormalities, either mydriasis from CN3 damage or meiosis from sympathetic plexus involvement, and sensory deficits in the V1 or V2 distribution. Diagnosis requires a high index of suspicion. The triad of headache, fever, and ocular signs in the context of a recent facial infection should immediately trigger an evaluation for CST. Regarding laboratory workup, you will almost certainly see leukocytosis, occurring in 90% of patients, alongside elevated inflammatory markers like CRP and ESR. Blood cultures are positive in 70% of cases and are essential for guiding antibiotic therapy. If there is concern for meningitis, a lumbar puncture may be indicated, showing pleocytosis and elevated protein. However, imaging is the cornerstone of diagnosis. In the emergency department, a CT of the head and orbits with IV contrast, specifically in the delayed phase, is the first-line modality. You are looking for filling defects, venous congestion, or bulging of the lateral sinus wall. If the CT is negative but your clinical suspicion remains high, you must proceed to MRV. MRV is the gold standard with 95% sensitivity and can identify thrombosis that CT might miss. Distinguishing cavernous sinus thrombosis from orbital cellulitis is critical because they can appear similar. Suspect cavernous sinus thrombosis when specific signs of cavernous sinus involvement appear. Cranial nerve deficits rather than simple eye immobility, especially an isolated lateral rectus palsy from sixth cranial nerve damage, causing inability to move the eye laterally. Sensory changes in the upper or middle face from trigeminal nerve branch involvement, progression from one-sided to both-sided eye signs within 1 to 2 days due to intercavernous connections, and pupillary changes such as constriction from sympathetic injury or dilation from third cranial nerve compromise. Cavernous sinus thrombosis more often causes severe central nervous system and systemic features, including intense frontal temporal or retroorbital headache, altered mental status, seizures, or signs of meningeal irritation. The management of CST rests on 4 pillars: resuscitation, antibiotics, anticoagulation, and specialist consultation. First, we must initiate broad-spectrum antibiotics immediately. A standard empiric regimen includes ceftriaxone or cefepime combined with vancomycin or linezolid to cover MRSA. If a dental or sinus source is suspected, metronidazole should be added for anaerobic coverage. The second pillar, anticoagulation, has been a subject of historical debate. However, current evidence suggests it is likely safe and beneficial. Studies indicate that anticoagulation with heparin or low molecular weight heparin can reduce mortality from 50% down to roughly 34% and improve neurologic outcomes. The rationale is to prevent the propagation of the clot and allow better antibiotic penetration. The duration of anticoagulation is typically 4 to 6 weeks, extending up to 3 months. Corticosteroids are controversial and generally not recommended for CST itself, as they do not improve survival. However, they are indicated if the patient develops pituitary or adrenal insufficiency due to ischemia of the pituitary gland. Finally, surgical intervention is rarely directed at the cavernous sinus itself due to the complex anatomy. Instead, surgery is reserved for draining the primary source of infection, such as an endoscopic sphenoidectomy or drainage of a facial abscess. The prognosis for CST remains guarded. While we have reduced mortality significantly from the pre-antibiotic era, roughly 1 in 5 patients will not survive. Among survivors, vision loss and cranial nerve palsies are common long-term sequelae. Therefore, early recognition by the primary care or emergency physician is the single most critical factor in improving outcomes. Thank you for your attention. Please let me know if you have any questions.